If I asked you to get a piece of paper and something to write with, and to make a numerical list of all the things that you would be willing to die for, how long is your list?
The Panther 48.
Willing to die for.
The Panther 48.
Willing to die for. How long is your list?
What is the tribal self?
The Panther
The
48.
tribal self is what goes above the immediate acquaintances of the social.
Willing to die
The
for.
family, the people you know, live next door.
You would be willing
I'm
to
talking
die
about
for.
tribal
The
self.
Panther 48.
I'm talking about those living, those yet unborn, and those who are the
How
ancestors.
long is your list?
So the connection with the ancestors is tied into the tribal self.
The Panther 48.
What does that mean? That means that the tribal self constantly reminds us
Willing to die for.
that we don't have the
How
right
long is your
to
list?
claim independence.
The Panther 48.
Peace and power. Once again, this is Panther 48. This is your big brother Psych, the samurai of the Panther 48, as Brother E called me, the architect of the Panther 48, calling out of Texas. We got Brother E, the ninja of the Panther 48, as he likes to call himself, the esteemed root beer drinking oracle, and our minister emeritus, and minister of information emeritus, calling out of Florida.
I prefer the line between the samurai and the ninja. The line between.
No, you the
Okay.
ninja. We got Brother War, our Warridian warlord, chief chairman of the San Diego chapter of the Black Panther Party, and our big head scientist called out of California.
All power to people. Don't forget the people of Black Panther Party.
Oh yeah, and the chief of staff of the People's Black Panther Party, headquartered out of Atlanta, chaired by Yang Nkrumah. And we have our brother Ausar, called out of Dallas, Texas. I'm gonna let the brother give you a little background of himself. One of the members of the I don't want to say original new Black Panther Party, because that's kind of an oxymoron. Original and new.
Call it what Colleague said. He said the most rebellious chapter of the most rebellious organization in the country.
Okay, that's a good one. I don't think I could do it no more justice than that. We got Brother Ausar.
Peace and power to the family. Thank y'all for having me. I'm Brother Ausar. I'm living in Dallas, Texas. I am the founder and director of SPEAR. SPEAR is an acronym for Survival, Preparedness, Emergency, Armament, Resistance. Also the founder and director of SOS, Strategic Operations Service, which is a consulting firm and working on laying the foundations for a security company. Again, I'm located in Dallas, Texas, and again, I'm just happy to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
All right, brother, we appreciate you for coming. Brother Ausar is going to be our guest today. Today, we're going to build, the name of the build is called World War III. And to start off, first, because everybody knows, if y'all don't watch this a little bit, I like to consider myself an amateur wordsmith. So we're going to deal with definitions, and we're going to give you the definition of the word war. I'm going to start with it from, I'm going to quote Huey P. Newton. I'm going to quote Huey first when I start building on the definition of the word war. Once in a essay Huey wrote called A Functional Definition of Politics, Huey said that politics was war without bloodshed, and that war was politics with bloodshed. What he was doing, he was actually quoting Karl von Clausewitz, who wrote a book called On War. If you've never heard of it, he's considered, and I'm just breaking down the origins of these concepts, E, not saying that he's the greatest master that ever done it, E, but he's considered to be the West's premier war strategist. You know, that's who they study, who the West studied primarily for war, and they study Niccolo Machiavelli for statecraft. Those two basically books, or those two manuscripts, come together to create the West, the European way of thinking when it comes to strategy, warfare, and statecraft. And Karl von Clausewitz actually said that quote. And what Huey broke down, the way he explained it, he said that when people desire something, then they participate in the non-violent aspects of war, which we call politics. And then once the people continue go down the road of politics and they still don't get what they want, then politics become physical. which differentiated from the peaceful means of politics, and we usually call it war. But war and politics are essentially the same thing. The word war has its origin in a German word, austere. I think that's the word. I believe that's the word for it. I remember the Spanish war, which is called, we hear it all the time, guerrilla, which is guerra. That's the form that we know more than anything else. But the original word that we use literally means to confuse or not complex. What's the word? What is the word when you confuse somebody? It's another word to perplex them. That's the word I'm looking for. That's what the word literally means, to confuse or to perplex. That's what the word originally means. And we have its origin in the word guerra in the Spanish word, which is guerrilla, which means small war, which is the origin of the word war. But anyway, the word basically is used when two or more opposing sides are in conflict against each other, and a struggle ensues. I remember one time, War, you told me, I don't know if you remember, there's a lot of stuff you told me years ago you don't remember because you're getting old, but you told me that life was war. And you said if you pay attention to war, you told me that war has to be respected as well as peace, because life is war. And if you understand that then you start looking at war as an art, because as you live life, there'll be things that's going to come against you to try to stop you from living, to try to stop you from accomplishing your goals. Your job, your responsibility is to then respond to those things properly with a proper strategy in order to make sure that those things do not succeed and stopping your forward progression. Your goal is to then overcome those things. Just to have something else pop up again, as long as you're alive, this is going to continuously happen. So life is war, and you have to be prepared for war. And that's my understanding of the concept of war. But with that, I'm going to pass the mic to Brother War and let Brother War build on some of the concepts and ideals of warfare.
With that concept there, that kind of goes back to a book called The Art of Peace, written by the founder of the martial science, Aikido. I can't remember the cat's name, but the martial science Aikido wrote a book called
I can't remember his name either.
I
know you're talking about.
Yeah. That's why I wasn't going to say it, because I know I messed up. So within that, basically, he basically talks about being at a state and a condition of always recognizing that you're going to be dealing with these dynamics. One of the things I often tell people in regards to looking at war from that standpoint is that the acronym itself that I go by, willing, able, and ready. The thing about recognizing that you're at war, dealing with being willing, able, and ready, goes into the fact of being able to see the terrain for what it is, see the conditions for what it is. And to me, one of the biggest issues with war is basically recognizing whether war has been declared on you, whether you talk about it from the individual standpoint, family, or the collective. And I think one of our biggest issues in regards to war is recognizing that war is actually taking place. Because if you don't recognize that war is taking place, you find yourself obviously not equipped to be dealing with the situation of war. So as we move forward in today's discussion, I kind of just want us to deal with it from that point of view, because, when we talk about this as it applies to World War III, we're basically building up to something. And as we build up to the concept of what is considered officially declared war on a specific land or people, it goes further back than that, because war itself is a state of condition that we definitely find ourselves in, specifically as dealing with as Black people within this land. And so when we talk about war and we talk about that, we need to know first and foremost that yes, we are at war, but what does that look like? And so from there, I want to just pass it to the other comrades, and we'll move back and forth on that.
And let me say this. I think it's important to recognize, especially about 2 weeks ago, we did a podcast where we revisited the concepts of principles, and we talked about principles, laws, and things of this nature. And I'm only bringing that up to say this: and when you're dealing with a state, when you're dealing with a government, then sometimes a government creates, and then we all know and understand the concepts of propaganda, the government creates the legal means of quote unquote war. Like in this society, only the Senate can essentially declare war. And if the Senate doesn't sign off on war, then it's not considered war. Like Vietnam, it was never declared war in Vietnam, but we know a war was fought there. You know, that wasn't a war, quote unquote. I'm not saying it wasn't, but I'm saying what they say. It wasn't a war. So in certain places, in certain times, war would not be declared by people because they don't want to admit that a war has been fought. And so it's important for people to go into what Brother War just said, for people to recognize when they're dealing with war, but recognize for themselves, because all the time an enemy may not use that word to define what he is doing to you. And sometimes he will, in order to galvanize his troops to operate in a certain way. For instance, they declared a war on drugs. And by declaring a war on drugs, they actually declared a war on people of color. And the people that fought that war was thinking like soldiers in the occupied ground, and they fought that war the way a soldier would fight a war in the occupied ground. So these mental, as Brother E said about symbolism a few weeks ago, we did that video on culture and symbolism. And if you haven't watched it, go check it out. These things automatically set up a certain way of reacting in the people's mind who was going to fight that war on drugs, if you understand those concepts and those ideas. But
if you're talking about the stuff that's going on in Ukraine and Russia and all of that, then they've said repeatedly that it's the West versus Russia, that Ukraine is being used as a battleground for the culmination of what's been going on for several years. You know, this coalition of white Western countries primarily, everybody else that's a part of it is just their bitch. I mean, let's just be real about it. All the brown countries that are a part of it. But NATO was created to fight the Soviet Empire back when, you know, all the pictures of the Kremlin and Gorbachev and all of those things when we were kids, you know, 60s, 50s, 70s, 80s, all of that, until the Soviet Union dissolved. You know, countries like Yugoslavia and all these countries became their own independent, or places became their own independent countries. So there was really no need for NATO anymore, because there was no Soviet Union. It was just Russia. So it's been said over the years by a lot of people, why is NATO still around? Why is NATO still around? Well, we kind of see that, because the reality of it is what's going on with Russia and Ukraine has been going on since at least 2014, when the Ukrainian government was bombing the ethnic Russians living in the Donbass and Donetsk part of Ukraine. And Putin sitting there telling them, stop bombing them people, stop bombing their people. Those are your citizens, and they're our ethnic family members. We have literal family members living in that area. Stop doing that. So in 2014, with the Minsk agreements, NATO and all these countries and Russia negotiated this peace treaty for Ukraine to stop bombing the hell out of these folks. Well, bombing never stopped. Fast forward, former Chancellor Angela Merkel of Germany, like basically the president of Germany, said that the whole Minsk agreements was just a ruse to buy time for NATO countries to arm Ukraine so that they could have this fight. Putin's issue is, for one, they're bombing these folks that they consider family and who consider themselves a part of the Russian Federation. Number two, NATO, when the Soviet Union dissolved, one of the promises that the West made to Gorbachev and all of them was that NATO would not expand any further than what it was at that time, which is about Germany. So it wouldn't advance any further closer to Russia. Of course, they did just the opposite. And NATO's been expanding ever since to include like Poland, Lithuania, these other countries. Now Sweden and Finland are trying to jump on and all this mess. So Putin's seeing these Western countries, who Russia and the West have a history of having a problem with each other. He's seeing these Western countries get closer and closer to his doorstep. So of course he's going to start reacting. It only makes sense. From the West side of it, let's face it, if you owe somebody money in the street. It gets to a point where you become so broke, your only option is to fight the people that you owe money to. I mean, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You owe the mob so much money, you got to go to war because otherwise they're just gonna kill you. That's kind of the position that the U.S. is in. The U.S. and other Western countries are so broke, owe so many people money that they've got to start a war and continue a war situation so they can continue to make money and get rid of some of the folks that it owes money to. So with the U.S. being broke and other Western nations being broke, they've chastised and pushed, and there's no one on the Western front, so to speak, on the Western allies. There's no one talking about peace agreements. The only person that's been bringing up peace agreements have been China and Putin. That's it. All of the Western countries are making big money off of selling all of these weapons to fund these to capitalize capitalism off of these wars, as they always do. You add to that mix China and Taiwan. During World War II, Taiwan, this little island country just outside of China, which at one time it was a part of China, and then the whole Chinese Revolution thing went on. A lot of the cats that fought for the revolution but got defeated made their escape to the island of Taiwan. And so China has always maintained that Taiwan is a part of China. And part of the US's peace agreement, so to speak, with China was to recognize or stay silent on the China-Taiwan question. In other words, the US, one China was the viewpoint of the US, that they agreed not to acknowledge Taiwan as a sovereign nation, but to see it as a part of China. China was good with that. China, that's what China wants. And one of the reasons is because that island during World War II was the place where Japan launched a whole lot of sorties when they went to fight China. In other words, Japan would park its planes there and then run airstrikes from Taiwan over to China, bomb them, come back and land. So China is very, very aware of the strategic positioning of Taiwan. And the US continues to goad and push and prod and attempt to start that argument and disagreement as well. So without going further into the WEF and all of those types of things, because when people start talking about, that's conspiracy theory, all that bullshit, that's essentially the playing field. You know, we joked about it last year during Black History Month, their Black History Month, that World War III started during Black History Month. You know, that's been the dopest Black History Month I've ever experienced in my life. But really and truly, the first victim of war is the truth. And so and that's speaking to the propagandizing of the people. People have to be brought up to a level of being propagandized to support this war with whoever it is. We have, you know, Putin's not come to anybody's house in the hood and threatened anybody. The Russians ain't knocked on my door, not yet. Ain't pulled me over, ain't Billy clubbed the brother to death, ain't did none of that. But we have to be brainwashed and propagandized to believe that Russia is an enemy, and Ukraine is this group of people that we gotta sacrifice for and all of this nonsense. It's also financial. Prior to Japan going or being, you know, officially in the mix, the U.S. imposed sanctions and embargoes against Japan. That's the first thing you do. What is that movie? It's a movie I saw, no, Dave Chappelle, talking about one of his experiences when he was a kid with the dude doing the shell game up in, I don't know, DC or New York or somewhere. But to cut it short, he did something. They called the dude out and exposed his hustle, and the dude bent down and kind of picked him up and grabbed him and looked at him and told him, don't you ever fuck with a man's money. Don't you ever mess with his livelihood. Because we all know that's the shortest way to get a fight out of somebody, is to take their ability to produce for themselves out. So essentially, the U.S. and Western nations had already declared war on Japan by imposing these embargoes and sanctions, just like they did with Iraq, just like they've done with Iran, just like they've done with Afghanistan and all of these other countries. They declare war by imposing these sanctions and basically saying you can't get no food. And that's a part of the war game. To starve your enemy into submission is what it's an attempt to do. And we can take a lot of those ideas and look at what they do in our communities with the way that they starve us, with the way that they hamper our ability to make money, to provide for our families and leave us certain ways. But what it all boils down to, and this being on the level that it's on, we're dealing with nuclear powers at this point. Like, this ain't Iraq, this ain't Afghanistan. You know, you're dealing with a group of people who have said, if you keep doing this, we're gonna do this. US and them kept doing this, so they did that. Every step of the way, this cat has said, this is what we're gonna do. And every step of the way, they've done it. There have been talks of strategic or tactical nuclear strikes. It's nonsense. There's no such thing as a tactical nuclear strike, because as soon as someone fires one, it's over. In fact, Putin just pulled out of the last nuclear arms treaty that existed between Russia and the West, which was one of the treaties designed to try to keep in check the number of nuclear missiles that countries have, keep that arsenal from expanding. So yeah, essentially, we're in the middle of World War III now, but the masses of the people are unaware, because though it's been said that it's the West versus Russia, as we said earlier, folks don't declare war because it takes the act of Congress or all of it. They have police maneuvers or special military function. They give it some other name. They propagandize the people and trick the masses of the people. And, oh, it's not really war. It's just a police movement. It's some bullshit. So again, it goes back to recognizing what it actually is. And we are in the midst of a war, a world war that is literally bumping up the tension every day. These cats are getting closer and closer to the possibilities of a nuclear war. And even if it's a nuclear war, just going head to head with China and Russia, the US is screwed. And so it would make a whole lot of sense for folks to tap into that possibility and start looking at ways of becoming more self-sufficient, i.e. prepping, homesteading, all of those sorts of things.
You need to turn that air conditioner on over there. You sweating like a runaway slave. And I
am a runaway slave.
I see the chain still on you.
I
thank you for saying that. Let me correct myself. Earlier I said it takes act of Senate, it takes act of Congress. Senate and the House of Representatives make both together make up Congress. The word Congress means a unity or to unite, and it takes an act of Congress. I said Senate a while ago, and that's my bad. I had to correct myself. But okay, I got a question I want to ask, because you just said something that segues into the next statement. What is domestic warfare, and how does that look in the USA? You know, you were saying that we're in the middle of World War III, but a lot of people don't understand it because they don't understand the concepts of propaganda. A lot of people don't understand how that affects us. And then you talked about some of the things that we need to be doing here, like you talked about prepping and homesteading. So what is domestic warfare though? And how does that look? Anybody, that ain't just to you, E, that's to anybody that want to jump in and answer that question. What is domestic warfare, and how does that look in the United States of America?
Ausar, you want to jump on that?
Yeah, I'll get in. Domestic warfare, we all know that the Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, was known and founded on carrying out operations across the globe. And what we found out that they would start to do was interfere, whether it's FBI, CIA, or other agencies, to bring those tactics and closer to home. So what you would have is they taking those tactics and bringing them here, i.e. sabotage, i.e. we go into the Palestine train derailment. Not only Palestine, train derailments, and what he was talking about, the Black history, but you got to understand that during February and still today, there has been over 20 plus trains derailing. There's been over trucks carrying lethal gas in this country that's being imploded and exploded. they would someone could be into sabotage and cutting off infrastructure or causing the economy, because we all know that America depends on its railways. Even though America's railways is still using technology from 1903 when it first started, that these trail trains and stuff need updates. And then there was something that they were talking about where the people were picketing and saying that they wanted to look at this and see why that these trains were being derailed, and the people began to protest and picket, saying you're not allowing us enough time to do this. It's like they don't care, but it's just sabotage. It's attacking our infrastructure, whether it's planes, trains, railways, airlines. There's a lot of airlines right now are having mishaps where planes are going up and almost running into each other. Is it a coincidence? Again, trucks being toxic gas, strange trucks on railways. For some reason, they can't get off railways. If I want to attack your infrastructure, I would start to do that. I'd start sabotaging your railways. I'd start sabotaging your airlines. I would start sabotaging your food distribution, which last year, I think it was like over 150 processing plants started to go up in flames all over the United States of America. And no one really was talking about it, the so-called people that were in the know, but processing plants from chicken farms to meat packing plants. I would attack, the way that you're going to grow your food. I would attack the way your farm animals was producing. We lost so many cattle last year during the summer months where they were slaughtering cattle. So I would attack your food, you know what I'm saying? I would attack your infrastructure. And these things are people will say in the know or not in the know that these are conspiracy theories, but when you've got over 120 food packing or processing plants going up in flames by strange means, it's not a coincidence anymore. Or Palestine at the beginning of February, now we've got 3 more that just went off in Ohio, Ohio. Palestine, we got one just happened in Cleveland. We got one that happened in Cincinnati. Ohio is a heartland of farms. And these people are saying right now that they told them to evacuate, but then they could go back. And we just had rains over the last 2 days, so they put up a makeshift dam, and the dam was just sticks and paper, and now the chemical water. It's like if I wanted to attack you, these would be the things that I would do. These would be the things I would cut off the food. I would cut off the way you eat, because if you can't eat, you can't survive. I would affect your water. And again, we got a report about 2 weeks ago of something where a United States Marine actually shot a guy that was trying to take down an electrical processing plant. And they say that the Marine shot this guy, and maybe the guy, they said, worked for the FBI. And sources say that there's a rogue FBI agency out there called the Fifth Column that are doing sabotages. Again, before all of these train derailments started happening, they were attacking the electrical grid. And that's the thing that people got to understand. If the grid goes down, it doesn't matter that we're in World War III. They can destabilize America from within. And I don't believe that there's a military country, maybe China, but logistically and technology that can compete with America. What I would do, I would soften up America. I would attack the infrastructure when it comes to farm. I would attack the water. I would attack the grid. Not to mention these strange things we've been shooting down out the sky. You got to understand that only 3 weeks in the beginning of February, the United States government was shooting things out of the sky. UFO in the media is UFOs. What is a UFO? Unidentified flying object. They have different terminology for them. Oh, it's a weather balloon. But if that weather balloon was carrying sophisticated equipment and that equipment drifted across America, whether they could have did an EMP strike. Were they flying these weather balloons across America to gather intelligence? Because we know that Sources say that they were flying across the heartland where our strategic missile capabilities were, getting grid locations on us. I don't know, but I haven't heard a peep out of what were the other flying objects coming from Canada, coming from Alaska. These are the things we haven't even been told about. We forgot about that because after that, everything got quiet, and it's been 10 to 15 more train derailments or trucks. Houston, South Carolina. 3 happened 2 weeks ago, a week ago. 1 in Texas, 2 in Mexico. So it's picking out targets on your infrastructure, whether it be electrical grid, the farmland, the water supply, and that's how I would do it. And everybody that's strategic and military operations know that that's how you do it. You cut communications, you stifle them where they can't produce this and that. Then you soften them up. So whatever invasion, if it comes, it comes. But I've already softened up my target. And all these places are soft targets. You know what I'm saying? When it comes to factories, warehouses, chemicals, polluting the air, and it's softening America up for whatever comes next, whether there's an outside enemy or we're dealing with America doing domestic terrorism on its city.
I need a definition. Break down to me what is a soft target, so that the people can understand that when the brother was explaining that.
Well, basically, a soft target is a person, location, or location easily accessible to the general population with an open security hole. Also, like he said, a soft target tends to be venues or resources unprotected from military type strikes. And when we say military type strikes, that don't necessarily mean by the military. It just basically means that these are areas to where there may be very little minor security from the standpoint of it actually being dismantled or destroyed or disrupted. And the thing about soft targets as it applies to domestic warfare, what we have to realize, the importance of that is when you create situations for soft targeting, ideally what this does is it helps to dismantle an infrastructure, or helps to dismantle a body of people or a conglomerate that's normally fortified or normally together, normally unified, and able to protect itself from external forces. And as this applies to domestic warfare, the idea here is when you're dealing with soft targets from an internal structure and you're weakening it that way, it just makes it that much more easier for the enemy, with whatever you want to call it, enemy to be, to be able to create a ripple effect to where the internal security of a country, or the internal security of the people, or the internal awareness of the people are not able to respond with the proper resources to prevent it from going to the next stage of warfare. And what's important about that, and let's just kind of reel this back in a little bit about us as Black people and our conditions, because we're constantly dealing with elements of domestic warfare, and like Brother Ausar said, CIA. So when you talk about domestic warfare on that level, basically it's racism, economic, social, political, and psychological oppression, implementing contingencies like MK Ultra, contingencies like COINTELPRO, and all the secret names and operations that are followed that just basically are the same things of a different name. And by weakening up a population or a particular group of people, it also, from the domestic side, it also prevents this quote unquote country, or any country that's in power, from its citizens being able to take back or regain control or correct some of the procedures that are happening to allow that world power or that country to maintain its grip on the population or the people. And so soft targeting, as it applies to that, is generally applied over a period of time consistently. In other words, it's kind of like thinking of something as being slow poison. When you slow poison something, you create an unfair advantage to where that target that is being slow poisoned, or a target that is being softened up, never is able to operate at a maximum capacity to be at an equal or a level to where it could literally unite itself and come against the oppressive forces that are targeted. And oftentimes, because of the way soft targeting is deployed, the masses of people don't necessarily see it, whereas individuals may see it. But by soft targeting a population in such a way, you prevent the collective operations or the collective, should I say, collective synchronization of mobilization by that population, and you keep them stagnant and at stalemate and disenfranchised in terms of them being able to unify around a cause and actually implement a level of power to slow down or to stop the way they have been targeted. And in fact, over time, what happens through the soft targeting is that the people tend to be conditioned through the soft targeting, and therefore, when you think about it as a form of oppression or a form of conditioning, what happens is the people basically learn to adapt with that condition, which is what we call within the Panther Party, basically learning to deal with that conditioning, which we call coping. So instead of us attacking something from a solution-based approach, we learn to cope. Because you're being slow poison, you learn to cope with that poison. And by coping with that poison, you never actually gear up enough recognition of yourself being under attack, going back to the state of warfare, to actually form a physical or mental or spiritual defense against the way you are being targeted, and you just learn to cope with it. And by coping with it, then you live a lifestyle of basically staying in a position of constantly being at a weakened state of awareness, a weakened state of readiness, a weakened state of being able to defend yourself on a proper level. So that's what's really important to us about soft targeting, and kind of like what E was addressing when we talk about the stage of being at war, the stages of World War III. When a population itself is being soft targeted domestically, the way we have as a people, then we're not necessarily able to address the onslaught of what comes next. And oftentimes we won't even see what comes next. And that kind of goes into the idea of what a contested zone is at that point, because if the people are not aware that they're at war, then they're not aware that they're being targeted, which is why we call that a soft target, because they don't even get it. They know they're being oppressed, but they don't recognize that oppression as being a condition of being at war, because a war has not formally been declared on a people, because you don't formally declare war on your citizens that way. You call it something else, which, like when we talked about, when Syke brought up the war on drugs, the primary people that was affected by the war on drugs were Black folks, period, point blank. You had white people that would sentence for having cocaine, and Black people that were sentenced for having crack cocaine, which is a derivative, which is a watered down version of cocaine, but yet doing sentences that are 2, 3, 4, and 5 times as much as the concentrate and the pure drug that's on the street. And so from that standpoint, if we're not recognizing that war has been declared on us, and we don't see ourselves as a soft target, then in essence, we're not going to be prepared to fight that proper battle to deal with warfare and everything that comes with it.
Okay, you said you used the term contested zone. Explain what that is. What is a contested zone?
I like to go back to the Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare by Kwame Nkrumah in regards to what he stated, and a contested zone being an area of conflict still undergoing conflict or war, but not yet fully under control of the occupying opposition or army or the people of that land. One good example I like to give about that, just to again bring it back to the Black experience, is what we call gentrification. You may have the inner city to where the Black people may occupy a good percentage of the land, or not necessarily in control of the land, but we occupy that land. By occupying that land, this may be a resource that wants to be re-seized by a different population. And so what they do within that contested zone, they will implement a strategy of land grab by raising the taxes, by doing things to where the people of that land are not ready or not capable of being able to deal with staying in that land. And so therefore the situation that's dealt, it causes those people to have to move out of that land and out of that area. So we're living in a situation of a contested zone because you are actually undergoing a stage of warfare that is working toward pushing you off that land. An ongoing contested zone is like what you have happening in Palestine. And with in that long, what's referred to as a long protracted war at that point. So a contested zone is basically point blank when you're dealing with an area of territory that is not quite fully under control of one party or another party, and is at a constant state of war in terms of that land being seized or grabbed.
All right, we got another one then. What are the conditions of being a combatant of a protracted war?
Well, when you talk about that, and I'm just gonna use a few minor concepts of that. The deal of addressing a protracted war, there's stages. One of the stages would be what's called positional warfare, which and then the second stage would be mobile warfare, and the third stage is guerrilla warfare. The difference based on those different stages that you deal with under protracted war basically just goes into the element in which the enemy is targeting, or the enemy is strategically positioning itself to be able to fight a specific type of fight. And that goes right back to what we were saying earlier in regards to elements of the CIA and elements of that are taking place to dismantle our people. And even you can even take that back. We've developed economic power or resource power here in the United States, and it's been in our areas have been attacked and softened back up to the point to where we're not unified again. So the positional warfare aspect goes into creating a climate to where the people are not unify themselves and maintain a proper grip to ready themselves to be in war or to engage in that war. And when you talk about the mobile warfare from that standpoint, it goes into the fact that forces are advancing on you and you have to take a step back, or you have to be stagnant or nomadic in terms of your ability to hold your ground. And then the guerrilla warfare stage just goes into strategically targeting the people or population to the point to where the enemy cannot necessarily be identified. And this goes into what element of the trifecta that we talk about within the Panther Party, where we talk about physical, mental, and spiritual. Oftentimes our people are not recognizing how they're being attacked. So guerrilla warfare is actually being waged on a psychological level that prevents them from being able to identify the exact nature of how you're being attacked. And by not knowing the exact nature of how you're being attacked, typically what happens at that point is your response or your reaction comes about through forms of aggression and forms of what we call suicidal reactionary movements that don't ever create solutions, but causes you to basically jump in and attack the symptoms as opposed to being able to identify real problems so that you can come with real based solutions.
And that goes back to the etymology of the word war. As I was saying earlier, the etymology is from the German warso, which literally means to confuse or to perplex. But I got a question. I'm gonna play God's advocate right here, right now. They always say devil's advocate. I'm gonna play God's advocate. Y'all talking all this talk and all this, about Ukraine and war and all that. So the average cat in the United States of America, man, I gotta go to work, I gotta hit the block, I gotta hustle. What the hell does that got to do with me? How is that gonna affect the quality of my life? What would you say to that person that would ask that question in that way?
I was gonna let Ausar go. He's got more of the prepping day in and day out.
I would say to the average brother on the street, yeah, it's cozy to go to the grocery store. But what happens when the grocery store, you like to eat, don't you, nigga? You know what I'm saying? What happens when you can't go to the grocery store no more? What happens, you know what I'm saying, because the trucks ain't moving because of A, B, and C, you know what I'm saying? Diesel is already up. Trucks ain't moving like they supposed to be. Half of your stuff comes from China anyway. China is dependent on the United States like the United States is dependent on China. So now you can't eat. Well, war knows, everybody knows that when we got some type of natural crisis, or whether it's war or a tornado or hurricane, guess what? Gas going up. So what you gonna put in your car, nigga? That's if you got a car. So, you know what I'm saying? Or you catch the bus, buses ain't moving no more. You know what I'm saying? Man, it affects everything. You know what I'm saying? We don't understand that we're so dependent. We just got a report that they're cutting off the SNAP. They're cutting off the SNAP cards. Yeah, you ate good 2 or 3 years, you know what I'm saying, while we was up under a pandemic, but now they're gonna cut off your SNAP cards. 5 years ago, the WIC checks were late, and people was out there in the line talking about, how am I gonna feed my baby? Because you're too dependent on the government to feed you, to clothe you, to house you, to secure you. And that's the problem. When something happens, whether it be warfare, natural disaster, the prepper understands that, hey, look, I already know it ain't the government's responsibility to feed me, to secure me, because guess what? Local police ain't coming. In the event of a disaster, all state, local, and federal governments are going to cease to exist because their main job is to get home to their family, to secure their family, to make sure their family got to eat. It affects every facet of society. So the average brother on the street, hey man, do you know how to hunt? Do you know how to fish? Do you know how to get out here and forage for your food? Have you started, you know what I'm saying, talking to like-minded people? Have you started thinking about, you know what I'm saying, homesteading or getting a like-minded group of people? Because it's every facet of society is going to break down. And when it break down, you thinking you hard because you in the hood and you got a little 9mm, you know what I'm saying? You ain't gonna be able to make it, homie. You're not gonna know how to get food. You're not gonna know how to get water. You're not gonna be self-sustaining to provide security and safety for your family. You know what I'm saying? Your friends and your loved ones. It's gonna affect everything that you do. You're not gonna be able to move. Not to mention they're talking about creating safe cities all of a sudden. You know what I'm saying? What the fuck is a safe city? The safe city, man, you got to understand, Agenda 21 is not a conspiracy theory. This is something that we've been studying. Everybody on this that's talking to you right now, you know what I'm saying, on this podcast is talking to you. We've been heard about Agenda 21. These people are 15, 20, 30 years ahead of the game. They know exactly what they're going to do. And to sit back and think that it's a coincidence that these trains are derailing across America, it's crazy to sit back and think about these trucks with gas and what happened in Palestine, Ohio, and 3 other strikes, strategic strikes on Ohio. Why is Ohio? Why Ohio get hit so much? Again, it's in the middle of farmland. Not to mention that China has bought up damn near 95% of the farmland in those Midwestern states. China, your so-called enemy, has bought up farmland. Bill Gates has millions of acres of farmland. Their job is to destabilize us through the food, you know what I'm saying, to pollute the air, pollute the water. Well, they designate. FEMA comes in and says, yo, look, there's no food trucks coming, so come to the FEMA camp. We got soup, we got everything y'all want. Y'all want Hennessy and 40 ounces, we got that too. And niggas will be the first one to get on the fucking train to go straight to the goddamn FEMA camp, and then after that, they're gonna put your ass in an oven. It's real. You know what I'm saying? It's real because you can't sustain yourself. If I was at war with you, I would go ahead, like I said earlier, and neutralize everything that you depend on. I would take that from you and I would choke you out. You know what I'm saying? Everybody's talking about nuclear war. Nuclear war is the furthest thing from me. You know what I'm saying? Because if I wanted to get your ass, I would hit your ass with an EMP. I would do just what's happening now. I would disrupt your food chain. I would disrupt your water. You can't drink the water. It's contaminated. You can't fucking grow food because I put so much toxins in the air. Not talking about the shit they spray every day, trying to block out the sun. Do you haven't realized that we're at war at this point? You're late to the game. You know what I'm saying? I'm not even talking to niggas at this point about what you need to do. You know what I'm saying? Those who not into the game, that's good if you can get hip to it. But for those that's in the know, we need to step it up because it's already started. And guess what? It's been going on, but now they're speeding up the process. You know what I'm saying? Where they're not even hiding it anymore. When Biden comes out and says that we're sending money, billions of dollars to Ukraine, and we know that Ukraine is full of fucking Nazis. We know that Ukraine has goddamn factories over there and biological shit over there. Russia talking about taking back some shit that's theirs anyway. Is hell? It's their right to do so. Black people riding around with Ukraine flags and talking about, you know what I'm saying? We support Ukraine. You a goddamn fool. They don't give a fuck about Ukraine. This shit is about money. This shit is about power. Everybody knows that war is good for the economy, and we got to find another threat. You know what I'm saying? Domestically, again, I'm not even on what's going on internationally. I'm peeping it, but if I want you, I'm gonna put an EMP strike up, and within 90 days, it's on the record. You wouldn't survive. America wouldn't survive. A fucking 90% of the population within a year would be dead. That's just with the power going out. So people talk about what they're prepping for all the time. One of them is when the lights go out, because when the lights go out and the trucks ain't running, and they do an EMP strike, and everything runs on electricity, your fucking car's not. You know what I'm saying? It will disrupt every facet of normalcy that you can imagine. So yeah, the homie in the hood, it affects you because you depend on that Walmart truck getting to Walmart or whatever your local grocery store is. You know, the price of gas, when there's no gas and no diesel and these trucks stop moving, it is going to affect your way of life. Get hip to what's going on. It's not a game. It's not a conspiracy theory. You better start thinking about what if. I'd rather have and not need and need not have. And that's what you should be thinking. Oh no, I got all this gear over here and I got all of this. Yeah, it's cool. You know what I'm saying? But what if? You know what I'm saying? Your ass don't got nothing. You need to start asking yourself, how can you feed yourself? How can you protect yourself? How can you survive for whatever happens? You know, man-made disaster, natural disaster, or World War III. You need to be thinking about what if. And it's better, like I said, it's better to have and not need than need not have. If don't nothing happen, well shit, I got a hive full of stuff. But what if it does? And you're gonna be the one that's saying, well, I heard what the brothers were saying, I shot it up, I wouldn't, got that $150 pair of Jordans, I wouldn't put some rims on my car. Hey man, the days of preaching, you know what I'm saying, to our people, some of us have been doing it for 15, 20, damn near 30 years. Me talking to you, been preaching to you 15, damn near 20 years about what's gonna happen. The new Black Panther Party, the foundation of that is telling you what was gonna happen during Y2K. We did the Katrina thing. We always been talking about, hey man, you better be prepared because guess what? Local agencies are not coming to your aid. They've told you, United States Supreme Court, in the not the Constitution, but the Supreme Court is telling you that the police that you depend on to for your safety is not obligated to defend you. At the end of the day, you got to defend yourself. By the time the police come, it's over with. Who's going to protect you? Ain't nobody coming, man. So yeah, it's going to affect a lot of our people, man, in the worst way because we don't take this stuff seriously. But I do love, and I'm going to say this, and I'm going to wrap it up and move on, but I do love the fact that I do see a lot of Black people prepping. I do see a lot of people homesteading. I do see a lot of people getting together, pinching their pennies, going out and buying farmland, whether it's in Texas or Oklahoma or rural areas across the United States. I love the fact that some of our people, and more than we know, that are taking this conversation seriously. And at the end of the day, man, if you're not up on what we're saying right now, you're gonna be assed out because we're already at war. We're talking about World War III. We're already there. You know what I'm saying? They've already started doing preemptive strikes. Taiwan, look at the battle lines that are being drawn. Russia, Ukraine, Taiwan, China against America. You know what I'm saying? Right now, Israel and Iran is beefing. Kim Jong-il is throwing shit up in the air. It's already happening. The battle lines are being drawn for World War III. Every day the battle lines are being drawn. And it's going to affect you. Your money, the money you have, that shit is not going to even be relevant. I got $100,000. I'm a dope boy. Nigga, your money is going to be irrelevant when the stock market crashes. You know what I'm saying? It's happening. You know what I'm saying? Banks are gearing up. Banks run the globe. You know what I'm saying? They're telling you that the dollar that you put all your trust in, the dollar that you kill, you know what I'm saying? That you do what you do, that shit's gonna be worthless. You better get up on these survivors. You know what I'm saying? That's what I would say. That's how it's gonna affect you in every way that you can fucking imagine. World War III and what's going on right now in America is going to affect you. You better be ready.
To feed into what the Brother Ausar just said, it just always reminds me of I was reading a book on Pablo Escobar one time. It was called Accountant Story. It was wrote by his brother, who was the accountant for the cartel. And you know, if anybody don't know who Pablo Escobar, he was the major multi-billion-dollar drug dealer from Colombia at the time of his reign. If you used cocaine sometime in the early 80s, it probably came from him. And he was actually put on the Forbes list as the 11th richest man on the planet. His brother, the accountant, said if that was only to account for the real estate and things of that nature. They actually counted the drug money, they would probably be 2 or 3. But anyway, he said that when they was on the run from the United States government and the Colombian government, and they was in the wilderness, he said that they was burning bags of $1 million for just to stay warm. He was saying that they were getting bit up by mosquitoes, and all the money in the world couldn't stop it. You know, essentially he was saying that when they was in the grind, that the money meant absolutely, positively nothing. It had basically no value. As I said, they was burning $1 million just to stay warm because they had nothing else to burn for a campfire. But I want to ask the question since the brother brought up money and said that the dollar would be irrelevant. It's just a simple question. What do y'all think is going on with the cryptocurrency thing? The dollar and cryptocurrency. Hey, I got a question I want to ask about that. What are y'all ideal on that situation? And does that play into this war that's taking place? Because one thing we know about warfare, you could have things going on many different fronts that's leading toward one design. And not trying to lead y'all answer to anything, but that's just my thought or question I wanted to ask you, brothers.
I'm gonna say this: if the deep state or bankers, international bankers, cannot control crypto, everybody was jumping on cryptocurrency. I never fucking fucked with it because I understood that. Look, man, we're talking about international banking. You know what I'm saying? People fight wars. Iraq war. You know, that really wasn't about weapons of mass destruction. That was about people, you know what I'm saying, not going to centralized banking. Or Muammar Gaddafi talking about how he was going to come in and be the head of the United Africa and build a currency. That stuff had nothing to do with Muammar Gaddafi. That stuff was about him putting out a currency that was going to compete with the United States dollar. So who controls cryptocurrency? If any of these entities, you know what I'm saying, that are in power, you think they're going to let you just do something cryptocurrency? Yeah, they'll let you do it, but at the end of the day, if they ain't got their hands in it, if they're not controlling, that shit ain't gonna work. It's not gonna work. You know what I'm saying? They have to control it. This stuff dealing with deep state has a lot to do with the banking system. America's in trouble again economically with $100 billion to Ukraine, talking about wiping out student loans. Man, the debt ceiling is at its height. 2 months ago, they were talking about people that had income tax might not get what they think they was going to get because America is in fucking debt. How do you get out of debt? You go to fucking war. So when you're talking about cryptocurrency, it's like who controls it? Not some fucking kid in his house. You know what I'm saying? That ain't gonna happen. It's banks. It's international bankers, man. This stuff is about money. It's about controlling the money. If you don't control the money, but again, this shit will be fucking worth it. You better be getting up on what can you borrow. You better be getting up on stacking up some sugar. You know what I'm saying? Some fucking bullets, some water. Because your dollar, whether it be cryptocurrency, unless they control it, that shit is gonna be worth it. Put a fucking chip in your ass, and every time you scan it, they can tell you such and such just scanned it, this will take it out of that. This shit is way advanced. Cryptocurrency, to me, that ain't what that fucking shit is. I never invest in it because again, I know the people, you got to be able to control it. They're not gonna let people control fucking a dollar or currency without them being involved in it. Hell no.
I had a brother, he came to me yesterday. The reason I asked the question, because he was saying this to me just yesterday, actually. But he was saying that he was building on this. He was talking about when America went off the gold standard, because essentially they had more debt than they had gold. And he was talking about the same thing when it came to the dollar. He was saying that if you watch history, he felt like that they was going to move everything to cryptocurrency. Then he started talking about how crypto, if you was utilizing cryptocurrency, how cryptocurrency could basically be shut down in Pacific radiuses. So you could only utilize, if everything was cryptocurrency, you could only utilize it in particular parts of the country. You couldn't move outside of this part. Once you get past these certain boundaries, your money was gone. You no longer had money. You no longer could utilize your money, or you could only utilize it for certain particular things. And he was just basically talking about, he was essentially talking about that was just another way for them to control what you were spending on. I couldn't really give him an answer because I haven't done enough research on cryptocurrency. But he was building on that idea yesterday morning.
Right, but I'm gonna say this. Yeah, you're not gonna be. If I want to go biblical, mark of the beast, you won't be able to buy, trade, or sell without serving the mark of the beast. Is it the computer chip? You know what I'm saying? Is it the shit that they've already shot up in us? We don't know, but you're gonna be able to track that. Not to mention these so-called smart cities or safe zones. They're talking about building cities and you can't travel out 15 miles or 15 blocks outside said zone. Well, that's easy to do if it's a cryptocurrency or there's some way to monetize and track. But again, when they get control of it, yeah, it'll be a one world currency and it'll be a crypto market, but that'll be after the war. This stuff is about resetting. The Great Reset. We used to call it the New World Order. Now the popular term is the Great Reset. Great Reset of society to say, hey, guess what? We'll destroy it, and in the ashes, the phoenix will rise, and it's going to be like this. It'll be a cryptocurrency. People go to work and blah, blah, blah. They'll do this, that. We have to control it because wars are engaged on economics. You know, the big conspiracies that America blew up the pipeline, you know what I'm saying, between Germany and Ukraine. Going back to the Libya thing, you know what I'm saying, because Gaddafi was back in a gold standard, the gold dinar. We had nothing to do with how he was treating these people. They go in and kill and destabilize governments. They've been doing it since the 50s. Destabilize the government because they won't get down with an international monetary banking system. It's like, do the research. It's right there in front of you. But again, if it's going to be some type of cryptocurrency, it ain't going to be just one little entity controlling it. Because like you said, it's like they can shut that down anytime they want to. It's crypto. It's flying in, cyberspace. Then what? They shut down Cash App last week. People, did you get the money? No, I didn't get the money. Did you get the money? It went viral. People were trying to cash out people money, and that shit glitched and went down. And we already know black people cash at me so I can catch the Uber. Cash at me $20. We're still trying to figure out, we got cash out. You don't control anything. You're not in control of anything. So the shit that, here we go again, that you're used to surviving on, they was tripping on it. I think I read about it like 8 years ago. It went viral. They shut down Cash App. We know black people move Cash App to get a damn haircut. Mama, I don't got no money. Send me $20 so I can get a haircut. Okay, baby, I Cash App. But what happened when they shut down Cash App? If that's not a secure way to do it, then what the fuck is your cryptocurrency? You don't have control.
I see you over there like you.
So we're kind of getting two things, and that's part of the discussion, kind of convoluted. There's crypto on one end, and there's the government issued digital currency, which is I think what we're talking more about. Crypto is a decentralized ledger system, basically. Yeah, they're both digital. They have similarities and whatnot. The biggest thing that's different between them is the centralization. Cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and all of that are not centralized. They exist all over the place, all over the planet. And there's this level of anonymity that goes along with it. Whereas digital currency is issued by a government, is programmed by a government, and can be utilized in ways that cryptocurrency can't. So yeah, all of those concerns about them controlling what you can spend, where you can spend it, and essentially not having to police your movement simply because they'll make it so you can't buy gas and get further than 10 minutes from your house or whatever. All of those are absolutely concerns. In fact, Biden just signed an executive order, I don't know, last week, the week before, saying essentially the U.S. is opening up its investigation into issuing digital currencies. There are other countries that have digital dollars, basically. Now, like the Bahamas has a sand dollar, which is a digital currency. But those are absolutely concerns that we've been, like what was talking about, being a soft target for. And I think that people, because we don't perceive and understand what's going on, we've allowed ourselves to be passive soft targets. And there's a misunderstanding as to what prepping is. Prepping is not the TV shows, preparing for the apocalypse and wah, wah, wah. It's not all of that nonsense, that's hype. Essentially, in my mind, what prepping is an alteration to your state of mind, an alteration to your list of priorities. When you take on prepping as a lifestyle, you begin to see things in a very different light. You begin food, for instance. We're able to get back to the idea that Elijah was talking about and how to eat to live, because whereas now we eat whatever because it tastes good, when you start prepping and look at things from a prepper standpoint, you start looking at food as a tool. What is the best tool? How do I prepare? How do I maintain this tool? How do I get more of this tool? What is this tool doing for me? Is it necessary? Is it something that's going to benefit my situation? And when we look at food as a tool, we begin to be able to utilize it. And that's very applicable for every brother and sister in the hood, being able to utilize our food stamps or our money to buy the best food, to invest in the best food, to eat the best food, so that we're not obese, running around eating whatever we want when we want it. Now we've taken on this sort of prepper mentality. And even just the word prepper carries with it, well, by definition, means that you're preparing for something. We're not preparing for anything. It's already here. So when we said this in shows past, African people in this country can't be preppers. We're the original preppers. It's simply a lifestyle for us to be self-sufficient, to not depend on the government, to not give our freedom of security away to someone else. And security doesn't just mean somebody coming into your neighborhood, into your house and kicking down the door and all of that. Food is also a part of security. Clothing is a part of security. Men ought to know how to sew. At the very least, stitch up holes in their clothes and whatnot, because we don't value those things because we can just go buy some more clothes or whatever. Those things have been lost and given away to those who have oppressed us. And I think we have got to tap back into reality. War, can you give me the control for a hot second?
Yeah, let me do that right now. Hold on.
So I just to kind of I know there's a whole generation of folks. When I was a kid, there was a movie called, I think it was called The Day After. Came out in like the early 80s. It was like the first nuclear Holocaust film that showed not just the nuclear war or the nuclear strikes, but the result of life having to deal with the aftermath. And that's what we're really talking about. Let me show this real quick. What do oh, there we go. Tell me when you can see it.
Don't see anything yet.
Make sure you share your screen and your audio.
I got it. So Ward might remember this because he be studying that kid. Y'all know what that is?
Yeah.
Not you.
Yeah.
Or that.
Yep.
So after Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the only time that a nuclear bomb and weapon has been used in any type of war setting outside of testing and that sort of stuff. And it was used after the peace treaty with Japan was signed. So they were bombed after the fact because they wanted to show the world, this is what we can do. We're the top dog. These two pictures are shadows of people in Hiroshima, Nagasaki. They're shadows that nuclear bomb gets so hot that their shadows were vaporized and their shadows were burned into the walls behind them. I mean, let that really just sink in. That's the reality of the shit that we're dealing with. Dealing with something so hot that your ass is vaporized and all that's left is your shadow of what you were doing when that shit hit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then it was one thing, it was bad enough. But now the world is so proliferated with not just nuclear weapons, but we're so integrated economically. Even if if a nuclear bomb hit somewhere, say if one hit up the street from me, I'm running into it. There's no point in me trying to outrun it. But if it hits far enough away, I have, what is it? The tablets, I forget the name of them. They're in there. I forget the name of the pill, the nuclear radiation, or whatever radiation pill that you take that helps dissipate. Iodine, I think, is the pill. But being able to survive in a situation where you don't have grocery stores, where you don't have, all of the amenities, the things that we take for granted and think that if we don't have them, life is hard. This is what prepping is for, to get us into a mind state of being able to provide ourselves no matter what the situation is. Because the reality of it is, even if there is no nuclear holocaust that goes on, the economic interrelatedness of everything on this planet is so tight now that they no longer talk about recessions and depressions in terms of a single country. They talk about it in terms of the entire planet. Not too long ago, the country of Greece was faced with, they needed more money, but the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, the Global Bank, and all of them weren't going to give them any more money because the IMF felt like they were spending too much. That's like the World Bank. They felt like Greece was spending too much, so they told Greece, you got to reel it in and tighten up your belt. So one of the things they did was to make it so that people couldn't get money out of the bank. So when you're no longer able to get money out of the bank, what are you going to do? And if you think that's a far-gone conclusion, go down and try to withdraw over your daily withdrawal limits. They control your money already as it is. The digital currencies and all of those things are just another step on that progression. We're already soft targeted because they already control our money, but we're used to it. We've adjusted to it. We know how to spend within those limits. We need to get ourselves in a mindset where we think outside of those limits, where we think of outside of those economics and begin to dig into doing the self. And for me, that's one of the necessities for Black folk in the community for being preppers, for being, homesteaders, for getting into that lifestyle where we're not dependent You know, to quote Candace Owens, just for you, Syke, it is so crazy to think that Black folk can't do without the government handouts, without the government doing for us, that we can't do for ourselves. But the reality of it is, and again, this is just my sad position on the matter. It's too late for Black folks as a whole in this country. I don't care what you say. If we're not already at a point, because the economy is gone, we don't get it. The economy is when a government has defined a recession as 2 months in a row of negative growth in the economy. That's what it's been for 50, 60 years. This last year, they changed the definition because the country kept having month after month after month back to back of negative growth. So we are in a recession, and it's only continued to get worse because there's no way out.
All right, I got another question then. Is there a positive side to this potential change in life?
That's up to y'all. That's up to, I mean, it's positive for me. I got chickens. I'm great. You know, I live on a well. I got 5 different ways to purify water. So,
I say and rabbits.
And rabbits and a garden. So I'm positive. You know, I don't see it negative. I'm just looking at what it actually is. And it's the masses of the people that are going to decide for self whether it's positive or it's negative. That's on y'all. It don't matter to me. I just see what's coming. And whether we want to get caught up in, oh, that's negative, that's sad, that's bad. Okay. You know, you're going to say that on an empty stomach because you ain't going to have shit to eat. Because we're so caught up in, oh, that's sad. Oh, no, it is what it is. Deal with it and move on.
Let me add to that. To me, one fortunate aspect, what can turn into a positive is usually through adversity or position where you bagged up against the wall. Oftentimes, that's what it takes for people to come together and finally unite around a specific cause. And so the positive thing that could potentially happen out of these catastrophic events is that Black folks are forced in position of basically being able to have to work together. By having to work together, then we're more out to be able to deal with the change. And that goes into the fact that we're used to being on the bottom, we're used to being oppressed, we're used to being victimized. And so from a standpoint of sheer survival mode and mentality, we have a greater chances of prevailing the conditions of what the average quote unquote middle class or white person is not capable or ready for. It's like how we had situations to where white folks lose their money and they start jumping out of buildings and start committing suicide, start killing themselves. And think back on when COVID first hit. When COVID hit, you had a huge surplus of the European population that started calling themselves empathizing or recognizing the conditions that Black folks face every day as a result of economic disparity. And so as a people, possibly one of the potential come-ups would be that now all of a sudden we realize that we need to pull together, or we able to pull together because
pipe dreams, them pipe dreams. And pipe dreams, you know as well as I do, in moments of crisis, people up and down, and Ausar, I know he gonna have to agree. People are gonna fall back onto what they know best, what it is we practice. If you somebody kicking your door and you've never picked up a pistol, you're gonna freak the fuck out. But if you at the range every week or whatever, you're gonna know how to use the mechanism. Masses of people are going to do on a larger scale. We see it. You talk about during COVID and all of that. What were the masses of the people doing? We're busting windows. We're protesting and yelling. We're doing what we know how to do. We don't know how to survive. We're gonna flash back and we're gonna be at each other's throats. That's just the reality of it. And I'm gonna tell you, it all goes out the window. When shit hits the fan and it goes down, it's out the window. I don't care what you look like, Black Power and all of that. Keep it moving down the street. I'm not sharing shit.
You know, I kind of agree with E and Ausar on Mick when Ausar talked about preaching to people for 20 and 30 years. And because I mean, I see some, you know, I was away for a minute I was away for 17, and when I came back, I see some, even just thinking from a street perspective, I see these so-called street dudes on Instagram flashing their guns and telling on themselves. You know, when I see that, I see the pretty looking guns and the tight pants and the flashing of money, talking on money phones and all this nonsense is going on. And I just simply do not see a people that's prepared to deal with something on the level that y'all was discussing today. I don't see the person talking on the money phone having the ability, as Brother E so eloquently explained, of what a prepper was, and he talked about that mind state. I don't see that mindset when I see that. I don't see that change in thinking and thought process when I see that. And so we have a situation where people have not been prepared and are not prepared. And you're right. The practice of something is what makes it automatic to us. It's what makes it our natural response to dealing with a situation. If we haven't been trained or prepared for it, then when something comes our way, we can't respond correctly. And that's why many of us have went through the training. That's why when we was in the NBPP, that we had training sessions. That's why we went out and did the bivouacs. That's why we did the paintball shooting. That's why we did that, so that type of situation, if that ever came to us, we could respond correctly. We would automatically have a reflex reaction to dealing with certain situations. You know what I'm saying? And so, you know, I hate to say, you know, we would love, as he said, pipe dream. I would love the dream that the people, you know, could consciously wake up. But now it comes to a situation where you have to start recognizing the people that are like-minded, that move how you move, and then between y'all learn how to create a consolidate amongst each other, learn how to organize with each other, strategize with each other. Brothers that are still active like Brother War, and brothers that are still building, and organizations like even Brother Ausar can train and teach it to those who are prepared for that and who have accepted that understanding. But the mass of the people now, but see, historically, the mass of the people have never went in the right direction. So that ain't nothing brand new. And this is a crazy. Oh, go ahead, Brother E.
I was just gonna say, and if we really want to zoom forward and predict shit, all we have to look at is some of the cities where corporations and whatnot have pulled out. Places like Detroit, you know, Portland, Walmart. I believe it was Walmart that said it's shutting down all its stores because of all the looting. These folks are about making money, so slowly but surely, our areas are going to get even fucking poorer. Fewer jobs, fewer opportunities, fewer ways to make a way. So we're going to continue. There's nothing, and I've said this before, that it would be nice to think, but there's nothing on a big enough scale to turn that tide. This entropy where people are going this direction apart and it's becoming more and more primal in this world is going to continue that direction because there's nothing strong enough going on. Yes, there are little pockets, you know, wars doing stuff, or SARS doing stuff, but there's nothing to rival the propaganda, the economics, the war machine in Western culture, you know, to turn that direction. So it can continue to go in that direction until we're in those situations where, yes, it's a primal, very dog eat dog. You think things are rough now. You think the Wild Wild West was something. Go look at, War mentioned the Palestinian people. Look at what's going on over there. You got people fighting tanks with rocks. You know, you got Shantytown still in South Africa. And because we like to buy diamonds and whatnot with your girl, and she so disappointed me. I just have to say that on YouTube. She broke my heart. Lupita, if you're listening, you broke my heart, like for real. She's the spokesperson for De Beers. De Beers is exploiting our people, particularly in South Africa and those areas of those diamond mines for years. And it just broke my heart she did that shit. But anyway, because we still are monkeys that are dancing for the shiny shit, we're going to continue to think things are someplace that they're not, and we're not going to prepare. So we're going to be unprepared when shit continues to hit the fan and unroll, and we'll keep on going because that's what we know. That's what we do at this point. During the Great Depression, when white folks were jumping out the windows because the market crashed and all of that, it didn't affect us and hit us that way because I forget the brother, but one of those songs I was working on, we had an incubator called Segregation, where we were in our own communities, and to whatever degree we were incubated and not subject to the same drama and effects that the depression and the fall of the stock market and all, not just because we were already broke, but because we had a cultural infrastructure, a network in our communities to, matter of fact, I believe it was the Black fraternities owned or were able to keep the Black banking system in our neighborhoods afloat because they took their dues, their funds or whatever, and channeled them in that direction. And so that was a benefit for us. But we no longer have that culture. We have a culture of sterility. You know, it's like a man who's sterile. He can still have an organ, he can still come, but there's no seed. There's nothing there. And so the culture that we have is just that. We're still having an orgasm. We're still coming, but there's no fertility. There's nothing being planted, nothing being grown. And so we continue to go down this road of just complete and utter disarray.
I'm gonna say this, man. You got to get with like-minded people, whether that's in your family structure, your community, and start having this conversation. And even though everything that's going on right now, and it's happening fast, it's happening rapid, those are the conversations that you need to be having with your family, your friends, and your immediate circle. You need to be starting a contingency plan on what do we do in the case of A, B, C, D. You know, you need to start preparing yourself. Like he said, the mindset, everything starts in the mind first, and then the body follows. You know what I'm saying? You got to start thinking about what if this happens. And that starts with your bag, you know, prepping yourself mentally as well as physically, you know, getting what you need to get. Because like I said earlier, you know, we do a lot of shopping on Amazon, but what happens when the Amazon truck stop running? You ain't got that gear then, and you don't know how to get out and get that gear, you're not going to have it. You're not going to have certain, you want seeds, whatever you need, you better start getting it now. Get what you can get right now. Have those conversations with the people you need to have conversations with. And then again, that starts with your community, like-minded people, striking up those conversations. Sometimes we're so standoffish, you know what I'm saying, when it comes to this topic, because, you know, a lot of people, man, I don't want to hear that, woo, woo, woo. It's the same thing when it comes to the politics. They don't want to hear it. But I guarantee you, when you break it down to them and find out things that you guys have in common, that's how you open up the door. But your neighbor, being a lone wolf, everybody thinking that they're going to go out and be some type of Rambo or tactical Timmy, that's not going to get it. You know what I'm saying? You're going to have people, you need to get people inside your circle who know medicine, who are a nurse, a first responder, somebody with some type of training, someone with some military training, somebody who knows carpentry. You're going to begin to get with these people and build community, man, real community, not just people who you live next door that you don't have a conversation with, but you're going to start a cadre. You're going to start building up, you know, and training together and having these conversations. Go out to eat sometime. You know what I'm saying? Get to know that person, because if you don't know that person during the good times, don't think that when shit hits the fan that you guys are going to be best comrades. You need to be going out, putting yourself in different scenarios. You know, we're going to go out today. We're going to do some bivouacking. We're going to do some rucking. We're going to do some hiking. We're going to do some camping. We're going to do some fishing. All while conditions are good. Because again, when it goes down, you're not going to be able to create those bonds. Learn how to prep, you know, from basic medical to learning how to can, going back to what grandma and grandpa used to do, because they went through hard times. It's all type of videos out there on how to begin canning, getting in your house and canning, preparing food, going to the grocery store every weekend and buying an extra bag of beans or rice, canned goods, whatever. Start with what you know. But a thing that we fail to do is learn that when it comes to prepping, get you some stuff that you can barter with. Get you some water. Get you, you know, sugar, salt. Again, with the money crashes tomorrow, it ain't going to be worth nothing. So you're going to be left without a way to get services and goods. Learn how to barter. Get you some flour. Get honey. Honey goes for a long time. Get instant coffee. Stuff that people might be interested in. Big lighters, as many lighters you can get. Propane, minute rice. Start getting stuff like flour and stuff and storing it the best you can. Start with what you got, you know what I'm saying? But every day getting something. Every time you get a paycheck, allocate something after you paid your bills and did all of that, but started putting back a little extra for when times do get hard, you know what I'm saying? This is how you got to think, and like I love what he said. It becomes a lifestyle. It ain't just something that you do right now because you feel like it's urgent or when it happens. You should be already doing this. You should already be in the mindset. And us as a people, man, we're always late, man. We're so late when it comes to taking care of ourselves and our family. We got to get out of that. You know what I'm saying? But start with what you can do right now. Again, have those conversations with your family, you know what I'm saying, your closest people around you. Spark up that conversation, man. Like, what would you do if the lights went out? Anything you got to do to start that conversation. But you need to find like-minded people, man, who you can trust and people that you can build with and train with and just prepare, man. You know what I'm saying? Like I said again, it's better to have, you know what I'm saying, and not need not to have. Start doing that now. We are so behind. We are so behind where we need to be. You know what I'm saying? And I hope that people hear this message and they begin to take the adequate steps they need to do to survive. You know what I'm saying? That's all I got to say.
War.
I would say, to me, I want to just talk about the average cat that calls himself a gangster in the hood operates off what I call the double clip syndrome. The double clip syndrome basically means 32 bullets is all you think you need to be able to survive a situation. And part of that problem with that goes into what we're speaking on, is that we need to have the proper appetite for true survival as it applies to being able to overcome a situation like this. And so I would say that we must change our appetite. We must change our appetite and deal with what we call accountable spending, which is what it's going to take to recognize what it means to deal with bartering, like what Brother Ausar is talking about. Your Air Jordans are not going to be able to barter against anything. In fact, nice pair of boots I mean, it may take 10 pairs of Air Jordans to get you a nice pair of steel toe boots. You know what I mean? And so our mindset in terms of what our value system has to change. All the Jordans in the world, all the gold chains in the world that you may have in your closet will basically cost you a 1 pound bag of sugar if you come my way. And so from that standpoint, we have to engage our people, and our people have to engage themselves in terms of changing the codependency that has been built up, that has created that consumerism that got us living life in such the wrongful processes that will not let us be able to survive any type of cataclysm. And so the biggest thing I can say is your appetite for what life is and what life means and what life will be here as we moving forward, it has to change. The nature of how we started this conversation goes into what defines a situation of war. People have to accept the fact that they are in a condition of war, and that war is a protracted war, meaning that it is a war that is long-term, ongoing. It may be it may have started at a slow pace to the point to where you feel like it's okay to deal with slow poison, but recognize that poisoning is speeding up. And by it speeding up, you now have to slap yourself with the reality that things are going to change at a much rapid pace. And if you're not able to survive, you're not able to adapt to what's about to happen and going into the practices that Brother Ausar talked about, you will be basically utilized for any and every purpose that's needed to be able for somebody else to survive. Your leg will become somebody's drumstick. Hey, for lack of better. So we have to change our appetite. We have to change what we're about, and be wise enough to see what's happening. Be wise enough to see the writing on the wall, and either become part of the solution, or you will continue to be prey, or you will continue to be victimized, and you will continue to just be trampled over. And that's where things are headed right now.
Brother E.
Yeah.
Same question.
What was the question?
The
Oh, what
question
can we
was,
do?
yeah.
Shit. Do something. Do some damn thing. Because we asked the average brother and sister, what have you done? Nothing. That means you got a whole bunch of shit to choose from. It's as simple as like Ausar was talking about, you buy a suit, buy an extra can of soup, put that shit back. You know, buy extra, you know, whatever. Go on YouTube. Instead of watching the flyers videos and whatnot, look up prepping. Find out what you can do, what fits your lifestyle. But changing your mindset and approaching life from a different vantage point, one in which you want to actually survive, is a huge step. Because most of us don't give a damn whether we live or die. So, you know, even talking about preparing for the future or changing our mindset doesn't make a lot of sense to someone who doesn't give a damn about whether or not they live or die. So really, you know, doing your shadow work just so you can start to see things more clearly for what they are as opposed to what it is you want to see. And that's probably been one of our biggest problems. It has been one of our biggest problems, is that we continue to see things the way we want to see them instead of accepting it the way they are. I was listening to somebody talk earlier today, and he was noting that, forget who it was, that I think it was Professor Carr. He was talking about, no, it was somebody else. But anyway, he was talking about how we've got two options. We either passively accept racism, white supremacy, or we actively resist it. Those are the only two options you have. You're either working against the system or you're working on behalf of the system. If you're working on behalf of the system, that's fine. Do you be up in that system, be connected to it, but remember the matrix. The system goes down and you're attached to the system, you're going down with it. And be honest with yourself about the landscape. You know, don't just make money and think that you're big and bad and you somewhere and you've done something because you make a bunch of money. Figure out how that money actually works. Figure out why it costs so much more now to get the same crap than it did 10 years ago. You know, 10, 15 years ago, a $20 an hour job was great. That's good money. Now, $20 an hour job ain't shit. It don't pay nothing. It's because the value of what you have in your pocket is nearing zero. And if you look at places like, whether it's Rome, whether it's the British Empire, whether it's any of these empires, there are so many parallels as to what happened in the last years of those economies and those countries, those social structures. You know, Rome devalued its money. Used to be, their coins were made out of gold. But because the emperors, the Caesars and all of them wanted to wage more wars and party all night long some more, they needed more money. So instead of making them gold coins, they made them gold plated, which made them worth less. So you had to have more of them to buy whatever. And then eventually all the gold was removed from the coins and people were taxed even higher because the money was worth less and less and less. And that's exactly what goes on now. You like your stipend, you like your little stimmy from the government and all of that. You want your reparations, but ain't never gonna happen. But you get your reparations check or whatever, that money is gonna be worth far less than what it was worth before it was printed. So your money is continually losing value. You're having to work harder and harder. You're having to give up more and more, not realizing that you're giving up more and more. So we have to change our perspective and our outlook before we can even really go to war, you know? And again, I'm sorry, y'all. It's a wrap.
Well, I'm gonna say this before we close out. You know, one of the things I used to tell the brothers when we was incarcerated, because in prison they offer you two quote unquote free trades. I don't like to call anything free, because I used to tell them the fact that we're here, we're paying for it. Because every day that you're sitting incarcerated is a day that you cannot build for yourself and for your family. So that's the pay. But and you should get something out of what you're paying, because you're paying your life. So they offer you two free trades. Horticulture, what E does every day, as far as gardening and learning how to deal with plants, carpentry, plumbing. I used to tell them, learn these trades and then go home, because you're going back to your hood where you respected as an OG. And go back to that hood and teach these youngsters how to grow watermelon, how to grow cantaloupe, teach them how to build houses, how to build decks on the back of people's house. Teach them these things, because these things will give you two things. They'll give you a skill that you could utilize in almost any playing field, and they'll give you the ability to actually create your own method of finances. They'll give you these things. And what I read, he always think that Hugh is one of my favorite guys, which he is. I love his political theory concept, but my favorite guy from the Panther Party was George Jackson. And in George Jackson's Solidarity Brother, he said his answer to that question was that I would get my hands on some money whichever way I could. It wouldn't even matter how. I think it does matter how, because you don't want to risk putting yourself in prison. Prison takes away your ability to even work or fight toward freedom. That's one thing you don't want to do. They put you in prison and they give you time for a reason, because they understand that time is how you build. Take away time, and then they take away your ability to build. So you don't want to put yourself in a position to give these cocksuckers more power over your life than they already have. But he said, put your hands on some money. Create a community center. Don't say, I'm creating this revolutionary center to fight the man. Don't say none of that. Create a community center for after school to keep kids from getting in trouble. That's what you publicly say. And in that community center, instead of teaching basketball and football, you're teaching the martial arts. You're teaching the thought process. You're teaching self-defense. You're teaching these types of things. What he loves so much, the gardening and creating your own food, the prepping. You're teaching these type of things under the guise of keeping kids from the streets and keeping them from getting in trouble. So then when you have children growing up with this mindset, because you can't reach the adults. The babies are the greatest. You have to go to the seed. You can't reach the adults. They can't be touched. Once a person get to a certain age, you're probably not going to change their minds. So instead of wasting time, you go all the way back to the youth and you start working with the youth. That's what I truly believe. And with that,
that sounds familiar.
Say one thing else though about the carpentry, because I want to give people an application that they need to recognize why it's important. Because what creates situations of power is not the skill itself, but how the skill is applied. In this coming time period that we're talking about, as a carpenter, become a master person in terms of creating booby traps. Booby traps are, and I can only say so much, but booby traps are lovely. They're wonderful. You can do so much with a good booby trap. So when you learn your carpentry skills, learn how to put them to effect and put them to use, that's going to help you to deal with the antiquated situations that we're going through. All right. So it is the applications of warfare that you're going to have to start applying yourself to. So again, that goes back to how we started the show and talking about realizing that you are at war. Once you accept the fact that you are at war, then you have to act like a combatant. By acting like a combatant, whatever skill set you got, you must apply that skill set to combat. And I mean,
and with that, from the Warlord, we're going to close tonight's show. We thank you, Brother Ausar, for being a guest, coming on and giving us some dynamic advice and some nice pointers. I hope the people pay attention to it. This is your Panther 48. Subscribe to the channel. Hopefully, you got something productive from this. And peace and power.
You see, we've been misled by our leadership, for instance, that think that we can consume our way into equality and sees equality as an equality of materials. So if I have the same car as a white person, if I have the same house as a white person, a similar job, then I'm equal. But you cannot consume yourself into equality. You must produce. And you move into equality and beyond by productive thinking. Produce.
Are games of war. There's the larger part of the game that must be paid attention to as well.
Produce.
recognize basketball, football, soccer, and other things are tribal male games, and ultimately are games of war, and involve themselves about the defense of territory. The line that runs down the center of the basketball court is a borderline. It separates two antagonistic forces. And the major problem there is to defend your territory against incursions from the other side. And to what? Invade and take from the other what one must take in order to win and to survive. It's interesting to see the whole psychology operating there. The psychology of teamwork, the psychology of organization, the psychology of morale. The psychology of hierarchy, captains and guards of war, and other people operating there to defend territory, games of war, and to defeat the enemy. And yet you see black men play that game and miss all the points. You see black men walk on that court and call themselves by one name. Bulls, bullets, Nick, games of war, Celtics. You take one name and operate under that name. Identify with that name. Be proud of that name. Organize around that name. And on top of that, to dress just alike. In uniform. Yes, are games of war. To organize themselves and sit down and plot strategy and tactics. Study the nature of the enemy and seek to defeat that enemy. Isn't it amazing that black men can go on these courts and on these football fields, playing these primordial games of men and the games that reflect the realities of life, and cannot play them in real life?